Hi class, welcome back. This is part 2 of your relief project demo. Today I'm going to be showing you how to print your blocks at home and all the materials that I have sent you home with and what they are going to be used for. So first off, before we get started, there is an illustration board with this kind of raised surface here that I have left one for each of you. This will be important because this is going to go inside your wood holder that I will show you. You guys probably all remember this that you were taking home. Okay, you have various sizes of this, obviously. And inside here, this is going to be where your block fits to the right square, and I've also mapped out some 1-inch borders here for my paper to be lined up. And then this guy in here is going to fit squarely in here, and then your block will sit inside so you can register everything properly. I've made 1-inch marks here and here and here, and then also taped up ones here, so I know my 1-inch borders are going to be lining up here for my paper. Okay, so this is all very important that you have this at home. On the back of these, they should have a wood hinge here, and this actually can sit up against a table edge so that it doesn't move on you. You could also use your no slip mat that I've given all of you guys to put underneath your blocks so that they don't move as well. That should help. Okay, so you're going to be locking that up against the table, you'll see. Okay, now I didn't finish the beetle that I showed you last demo, so I'm using another one that I have that's from a previous project that I did with the Whittier College class. So just kind of, I have so many demo videos and things that I'm doing right now, so this will kind of get the ball rolling. You should also have in your kit, I've given you an ink, a black ink, which is a little different than mine. I have these from home. But you guys have a speedball black ink, and you should also have an extender. So I'm going to show you about mixing those inks together. You should also have a palette knife that I put in your kit for mixing your inks, and a brayer that you will be using for rolling out your ink onto your block. Okay, you should also have some newsprint that I gave you in a pad, and you'll be using this to print off of first when you are building up the ink on your block. And you also have some sheets of paper that I've pre-cut for you that are for printing. These are nice thin sheets of BFK printmaking paper that work really well for this, so you'll be using those. You also should have a baren that is used for printing. I only have a glass baren here, which are very nice, but they're a more heavy weight. But you guys have just a regular baren, a plastic one, and that will work just as well. Either that or a wood spoon will work as good too. Okay, so in a pinch you can use that. So first off, I want to show you guys how to mix your inks. So also too, I have a glass plate that I'm using. I gave you guys each a sheet of plexiglass that you can use to mix out your inks and roll them on. Okay, so I'm going to put out some black ink first here. Okay, like this. It off. So this is my extender. You guys will have a little tube of extender that I gave you. The reason you need this is because that speedball ink, the relief ink I gave you, is water soluble and it has a tendency to dry out. So you just want to put like maybe a nickel size amount with maybe a couple quarter size of your ink, of your black ink, and then you're going to mix these together pretty well with your palette knife. And all this does, the extender slows down the drying time a little bit, and those particular inks I gave you have a tendency to dry out, especially if you're in a hotter climate, okay, which now we're warming up a little bit, and I don't know where you're printing. Some of you might be printing in a garage or something, and I don't know, it could be hotter, so they have a tendency to dry out faster. So that's why I gave you the extender. So I've mixed this ink pretty well, okay? And then I'm just gonna take a small ribbon, you probably remember this pretty well, and I'm gonna create a small ribbon of ink here, okay? And then I'm going to use the brayer, and I'm going to roll out this here. Ink will get around, so make sure that you're not wearing anything you love, and maybe doing this in an area where you put out some plastic sheeting or something that you could get over at Home Depot so you don't get everything soiled up. Okay. So remember when you are rolling out your ink that you want to make sure that it has a nice even roll, but that it's just kind of a light hiss and not too texturized like orange peel. If you have more orange peel and you can hear a louder sound, that means you have too much ink on the plate, okay? So just enough to get a really nice kind of solid area of ink coverage, okay? And then you're gonna want to, you could put down newsprint or something for inking up the block if you need to. I'm just gonna kind of do it right over here since I'm in a smaller space. So I'm gonna start rolling up my block with ink. And just remember, the first couple of prints, it's gonna take a while for the ink to build up and start looking good. So I would print your first few on newsprint, and then once you see that it's printing better, then you can move to your good paper that I gave you. And for this project, being as we're doing a lot of this at home, obviously the addition is going to be a little varied because you're doing it all by hand now and not using a press. And then also too, you know, just because of the circumstances, I'm not going to be as strict about the additioning, although it's good for you to really try and do the best that you can in a home environment. Learning how to do this at home means that you could do this more and more in the future, which is nice, you know. Learning how to do things without having big, heavy equipment is a really great thing. You might end up really enjoying this. So, relief part, this project in particular is great for our circumstances right now. So I'm getting a really good amount of ink on. Remember, when I'm charging the roller, I'm making sure to get a good coverage, picking it up, spinning it a little bit so ink's getting everywhere. And I'm getting a really nice layer on top of my block. Sometimes your block will have a little bit of film on top. You can always clean this off before you even get started with printing with just a little bit of simple green. And that said, you guys are going to need to get some maybe just cooking oil and also simple green for your cleanup, okay? And those are very easy to find, obviously, your local supermarket or Home Depot or anywhere. Just have that kind of stuff handy. It's all green, and it'll be really easy for you to clean up your block, your brayers, everything. Okay, so I've got my block inked up now, okay, in here. And then I am going to bring this over, okay, and this is my little setup here, and I'm going to just be plopping my block into place, okay, just like this. Be careful when you put it in that you don't get ink around the edges here, because that'll directly get on your paper, right? And then I'm just going to take kind of a cruddy sheet of newsprint first, and I'm lining it up as best I can to my paper guides, okay? And you can put another sheet of newsprint on top, or you can go directly with the Baron. Basically, I'm going to be taking, now your Baron isn't as heavy as this, or if you're using a wood spoon, but you want to go in a circular motion across, okay? And you're basically putting nice even pressure around, getting the ink to transfer onto the paper from the block, okay? And I like to go around quite a bit. You can hinge the top if you would like with some tape right around here so that it doesn't move on you, for you to easily lift it up and down. But in this case, just because we're doing one layer, I don't think it's as necessary. I think that it's much more necessary if you start doing multiple blocks with different colors. Okay, and so I'm just going to lift a little bit here so you can kind of start to see how it's transferring. Okay, and obviously this looks very much like a rubbing, so it's going to take some time for me to start building it up the way I want to, okay? So obviously this is a process. You're going to need to do 1 or 2, maybe even 3 newsprints before you start seeing better results for your printing. And just remember, this is not going to look as great as when we do it in the press, but it will yield pretty good results, okay? So there's kind of my first one, and we can see the ghost of it. It's really kind of, it's definitely like a rubbing, like what we would do if we were rubbing using a Conte crayon on some sort of surface. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to ink up my block again. I'm going to do a few more runs and then we're going to go to the good paper, okay? It needs to be built up. Okay, so what I have done now is I've run several on newsprint, and one thing that I did realize is even though I made this little holder for you, it's just slightly lower than the block. So I've cut a little piece of cardboard that is the size of my block and put it inside there just to raise up the top of the linoleum block so it sits slightly above this holder that will go inside here. That will help it print better. So I think that that's essential. Any kind of little piece of cardboard you guys can get will be very helpful for that. The other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to slip this back here so it doesn't move as much. And then I want to hinge down the paper that I'm going to be using. So if you guys don't have any tape with you, one thing you can get is this kind of tape. It's like an artist tape, but it's a painter's tape. This is at Home Depot. It works really well because it doesn't actually pull the paper too much, but it sticks pretty well. So I would go grab just a roll of this as well, just to have on you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my paper up with my edges, okay, all of my different border marks there. And I'm going to just mix some tape here and here at the top. And I'm also going to do this little kind of hinge thing. So it's going to be also this way as well. And that will help secure it, okay? And then I can lift up and down, but without moving this paper at all, okay? And then you'll be using your Baron, which is a little different, or your wood spoon, and you're gonna again just go around in circles, and this really will help to not move the paper around too much. You don't need to worry as long as your paper is dry about doing it right on the back side, but if you want to, you can take a sheet of newsprint and put it on top between the printed paper and the Baron. It's really up to you. A lot of printers with home printing like this for relief, they actually want to see what's happening on the back side, so they don't end up putting any newsprint on the back so that they can see the transfer come through. And usually with thinner papers, Japanese papers, you really can see it. I think I'm going to end up putting a YouTube demo of Japanese woodblock printers up for you guys to see. It's really fascinating because they do this the whole time. They don't really do press work for their woodblock printing. and they do amazing prints. So you can get really good results if you just stick with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lift this up and see how it's transferring, which is transferring a lot better now than it had been before. But you kind of want to stick with it. The thing that I did do is I made sure to ink up the block maybe at least 4 or 5 passes, sometimes even more than you think you really need. And just remember, with printing dry, you're going to have a very different result than if you have it wet. You could end up misting the paper ahead of time if you really want to. That's up to you, but just be careful when you do that. Make sure that you blot it dry with no little droplets of water on there. Just take some towels and blot it dry first so that it's just slightly damp to the touch, okay? And that will actually end up helping you get more solid areas of ink coverage if that's what you're going for. Okay, and so you can start to see it's transferring better there now. Yay, okay. And I just kind of stick with it. Remember, this is a, it's a very manual process, so you might have to do many times running prints on newsprint before you start seeing the results you want. And then if you can yield a good couple of prints through this project, that's going to be enough to satisfy me. I just want to see that you're really learning this process and learning how to print at home, and something like this will become easier. Maybe you choose to do this for your final, which would end up being great. And you could do multiple colors this way with different blocks. So we'll talk about that when I talk with you guys next time in our meeting. So I'm going to kind of see again what's happening. You can start to see this transfer here. Okay, so it's not looking bad, and I can keep going. You could even, while it's set up here, you could decide to ink up again since it's hinged and then add a little bit more ink. You just want to be careful to not move anything around, because if you do, it's going to get slightly off registration, right? So the idea is we want to just make sure that when you're really careful with how you lift and transfer. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And I think for this project, you have at least 5 sheets that I cut you for it. So be careful with how many you use when you go into your final printing, but have some fun with this. And then we will be back in touch for the next project and looking at this in our critique. All right, have a great week. Talk to you soon.